Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona, and welcome to the October 21st edition of Horses to Watch. It's been a little while since we've done one of these videos, so just a brief refresher about what this series is. I take a look at replays from the past couple of weeks, trying to find horses that had trips or might have been prevented from putting forth their best efforts in races, really any type of race. You're rarely going to see me highlighting horses that are winners of stakes races or anything like that. I like to try to find some under-the-radar horses in claiming, allowance, maiden races that might have been prevented from achieving their best result based on either being against a pace situation, against a track bias, encountering trouble, getting a bad ride, any of those situations that might have really hindered a horse in their races. So we'll take a look at those replays. I'll walk you through every step of the way. And we're going to start off this week by going back to some races that took place the past couple of weeks at Belmont and Keeneland, actually 4 replays, and these are all maiden races. Let's kick it off at Keeneland with the race from Thursday, October 8th. It's the 8th race on that card, a maiden race. This one's for 3-year-old fillies, and we'll break them from the gate going a mile on the dirt course at Keeneland. And I want to focus on the number 9, Financial One, a second-time starter for Chad Brown. You'll see breaking right from the start. She's about a length and a half slower than the rest of the field. That's just a really terrible situation for a horse heading right into the first turn, because her rider really has no choice but to take her to the back of the pack, get her to the rail, and just try to save some ground and see what happens. Hope they go quickly up front, that things fall apart, because based on her debut, this is not her running style to come from quite so far behind. She just was dealt this hand because of her poor break. And heading on to the back stretch, the field, you can see, is kind of bunched up towards the front of the pack. They're really not moving that quickly up front. And Javier Castellano, who's riding Financial One in this race, he takes her well off the pace, probably farther back than she had to be. I would assume that's because he's trying to get her out of the kickback, to get her to settle down a little bit so she can produce a finish at the end of this race. But the difficulty that he's going to find as they come down the back stretches, I'm sure Castellano knows that they've got that short stretch run going a mile at Keeneland, so he has to make his move earlier than you would over a typical mile configuration with a normal stretch run. You see, heading towards the half-mile pole here, he's already catching up to the rest of the field, and he's going to try to make this move around the entire field coming around the far turn, but he's got to go 4 to 5 wide the entire way, and that's just almost impossible to do with a horse that's a maiden in just her second career start. She's now moving up the quarter pole to try to range up alongside the leaders, but she's had to make this sustained run while losing so much ground. And although she does get on even terms with the leaders at the top of the stretch, she's already used up all of her energy to get there. And as they come through the stretch, you're going to see she's going to fade again from that premature move. She just can't sustain it, and she's going to actually fade to finish 4th in this race. All things considered, this is a much better effort than it seems, because she's beaten a long way. She actually regressed a bit on the speed figure scale, but I think this was actually an improvement on her debut. It's just the trip work did not work out in her favor. Now, the worry about the horse like Financial One is that she does have gait issues, because she didn't break that well in her debut at Churchill Downs either when she finished second, although not quite as bad as this. So you want to monitor that moving forward. Also, she's a 3-year-old who hasn't run that fast yet, but she's got a big pedigree. She's by Malibu Moon, a Juddmonte homebred, a half-sister to the Grade 1 winner, Close Hatches. So there is potential here, but she's got to be more professional next time out. So she's one to give one more shot to, but maybe just one more shot. Let's stay at Keeneland and move on to Sunday, October 11th, the 7th race on that card. This race is for the 2-year-olds, going 6.5 furlongs. And let's break from the gate and focus on the number 7, Tap Gold. This is a horse who has some trouble coming out of the start. He's actually slammed between horses. I'm not showing the head on, but he's in those light blue silks right behind that horse in red. And he actually gets sandwiched between those two runners, has to steady and stumble a little bit. But he tries to rush up thereafter. And I said he's that chestnut horse with the white cap and the light blue silks. And you see he's just going to start throwing his head about. He wants to show more speed than his rider's allowing him to, but he's in traffic in between horses, has nowhere to go moving down the backstretch. And as they advance towards the half-mile pole, you're going to see again right here, he has to steady off heels, try and angle towards the outside, but he gets locked in by a horse to his outside again and just can't really go anywhere. And he's just really in a difficult spot for an inexperienced 2-year-old. He's not a horse making his debut. This is actually his second career start, but he showed speed in his debut at Churchill Downs, and now this time he's unable to show that speed because of that poor start and because he's encountering so much traffic. And now watch here as they come to the top of the stretch. He's going to try to make a move in between horses, but he gets cut off by the horse just to his inside, the eventual winner, who is going to angle out in front of him. And right here, you see that horse in the light blue silks just gets cut off by that horse coming over on him, gets pushed in down towards the inside. Now, again, he's in behind another wall of horses with nowhere to go. But all things considered, this horse never stops running and actually is pretty determined to come through and finish 5th in this race, just barely missing 3rd place at the end. I just like that this horse never threw in the towel, kept running through the wire despite that uncomfortable trip and having all that trouble. He matched the 55 Beyer that he got in his debut in the 2nd career start, but I actually thought this was a big step forward off his debut. Just didn't get to show what he could do because of that poor trip, and he's one that I would give another shot to next time out. He's also a horse that I wouldn't be surprised to see on turf down the line because his dam was a stakes place turf router, and he's a half-brother to My Point Exactly, who's a multiple turf winner. So he's one that I could see switching surfaces down the line. But in any event, whatever surface he shows up on, he's better than this performance that we saw at Keeneland on October 11th. Now let's transition to Belmont Park, and we're going to stick with the 2-year-olds. A couple more maiden races for those juveniles at Belmont. We're going to go back to Friday, October 9th for this first replay. It's race 4 on that card. And I'm going to focus on a first-time starter, number 2, Caramel Swirl. Breaking from the gate, kind of like the first replay we saw, this is a filly who has trouble getting out of the gate with the rest of the field. She breaks about a half length slowly, gets sort of squeezed back right after that. Not that surprising for a horse making its debut, just a little bit inexperienced, and she finds herself towards the back of the pack. Now, what's going to work against Caramel Swirl here is that they're not moving that quickly up front. This is a 7-furlong race, and they go 23 and change to the opening quarter, 47 to the half, just a slow pace situation, which is really not ideal for a horse that finds herself at the back of the pack. And you can see she wants to do more running than what her rider, Junior Alvarado, is letting her do. She's being restrained. She's got a lot of horse, but just doesn't want to make that early move just yet. And Junior really has no choice but to let her run up 4 wide outside of horses just because she wants to do so much more than what he's allowing her to do. And by the time they get to the top of the stretch, she's made this move to get up on even terms with the eventual winner, the odds-on favorite Malathot. But she's obviously had to work much harder than that horse to get to this point already. So while it seems briefly like she's going to go right on by and roll onto an easy victory, keep in mind that she had to make this premature move to get up into this position. So these two are going to separate themselves from the rest of the field from the quarter pole home, but Malathot's able to outkick Caramel Swirl to the wire because she had that much softer trip. Though these are both fillies that I think you want to follow moving forward. Even though Malathot had an easier trip, these fillies have big pedigrees. Malathot's out of Dreaming of Julia, that very promising runner for Todd Pletcher, who ran a 1:14 Beyer during her career. And Caramel Swirl, she's by Union Rags, out of a half-sister to Frosted, that Met Mile winner. So both of these fillies are bred to stretch out further. I think they both have big futures. This was a reasonably fast maiden race. And Caramel Swirl, though, is one that if she breaks better next time out, I think we'll see her break her maiden at a short price and go on to stakes company in the future. Let's finishing things up with one more race from Belmont Park. This is a race from Sunday, October 11th, the 8th race on the card. Again, sticking with the 2-year-olds, same distance, 7 furlongs. This time, though, it's the Colts and Geldings, and I want to focus on the number 2, Caddo River. Let's break from the gate, and Caddo River runs a professional race. He has a professional break with those yellow and brown silks towards the inside, and you're going to see his rider gets pretty aggressive with him. He's trying to hustle him through to show some speed. This is a horse who was coming out of a strong maiden race won by the Bill Mott second-time starter Olympiad up at Saratoga, facing some common rivals in this race. Actually, another horse who's in this race, the number 1, was also coming out of that same race. But he's finding himself in a maiden race here on October 11th that featured another very strong field. Actually, probably a stronger field than what he met in his debut, because also in this race was the number 5, Speaker's Corner, who was the eventual winner. He was highly touted up at Saratoga when he made his debut at odds on, and he's going to break through in his second career start to win this maiden race. But I want to watch the performance of Caddo River, because you see these runners group themselves into 2 distinct groups here coming around the far turn. You've got these 3 horses towards the front, and then a group of chasers that were about 4 lengths behind coming around the far turn. The pace of this race is very fast, and you're going to notice the 3 horses that were contesting the pace towards the front end, well, only one of them goes on. That's Caddo River, and the other 2 are going to drop away pretty readily as they come into the stretch here, and it briefly seems like Caddo River, who was setting this chasing, I should say, this fast pace, is going to get swallowed up by these closers, but he really never quits, is battling on all the way to the wire, and I like this when I see from a 2-year-old who gets involved in a pace and then re-breaks again when some horses challenge him, and Caddo River's just going to barely lose this race to Speaker's Corner. I thought this was a big step forward off his debut effort at Saratoga. He only improved his Beyer by 1 point to a 78 here, but I don't think a final time speed figure can fully encapsulate the performance that Caddo River put forth, and that's why I would look to the Timeform US speed figures and Timeform US pace data to really highlight how well Caddo River ran. He improved his Timeform US speed figure to 109 because that adjusts for pace, and also the 133 pace figure that he got for the opening quarter in this race, I think just indicates how fast he had to run to be up with the leaders in the early going. That's a very fast early pace rating for a sprint race. So Caddo River, I think, took a big step forward in his second start, and he's one that I also think can stretch out in subsequent starts because his dam Pengburn, she was a stakes-winning dirt router, and I think Caddo River might be a horse that we'll see, whether it's 7 furlongs or going a mile next time out at Aqueduct, is one that can take another step forward in his third career start for Brad Cox. So those are all the replays this week for maidens that I think can definitely improve with further racing, with more experience. They were prevented from doing their best in the races that we just watched. So hopefully I gave out some ideas. Hopefully we can make some wagering scores with these horses in the future. And tune in again next week for 3 or 4 more replays that I'll highlight on horses to watch.